So we use a Montessori school right now, which is very similar. So it's free play and it's not a lot of adult intervention, and it's teaching them to kind of get have pride in your work internally instead of seeking external validation, which crosses over to how adults are right now because everything we do is for likes and retweets and engagement. So we're getting our sense of purpose and fulfillment extrinsically, and that's not going to work because at some point you can't control those things. The only thing you can control is your inner state. So I mean it starts from childhood, but it absolutely kind of like ripples out, if you will.
No, you're totally right. And thinking about those sorry, go on.
Oh no, go ahead.
Well, thinking about those reinforcements and and that craving for online reinforcements, what that's done to us. Obviously, I talk a lot in the book about the different ways in which that's harmed our ability to focus. But let's start, if it's okay, Candice, with just one that I think everyone listening is going to think, shit, that's playing out in my life today, right? So I went to MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, to interview one of the leading neuroscientists in the world, a man named Professor Earl Miller, amazing man. And he said to me, look, there's one thing you've got to understand about the human brain more than anything else. You can only consciously think about one or two things at a time. That's it. This is just a fundamental limitation of the human brain. The human brain hasn't changed significantly in 40,000 years. It's not going to change on any time frame you and me are going to see. You can only think about one or two things at a time. But what's happened is we've fallen for an enormous collective delusion. The average American teenager now believes they can follow 6 or 7 forms of media at the same time. So what happens is scientists get people into labs, not just teenagers, people of all ages, and they get them to think they're doing more than one thing at once, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they always find the same thing, which is that when you try to do more than one thing at a time, you can't. What you do is you juggle very quickly between those tasks. Your consciousness kind of papers over it. You don't realize you genuinely think you're doing more than one thing at a time, but you're not. And it turns out that juggling comes with a really big cost. The technical term for it is the switch cost effect. It turns out when you try and do more than one thing at a time, your ability to do all those things rapidly degrades. You will do all the things you're trying to do much less competently. You'll make more mistakes. You'll remember less of what you do. You'll be much less creative about what you do. And when you hear that, it feels like I think a lot of people listening will be like, yeah, I get that, but it's quite a small effect, surely, right? I remember thinking that was not that big, right? How big is that? I'll give you just one example of many. It's a small study, but backed by a much wider body of evidence. Hewlett-Packard, the printer company, got a scientist in to study their workforce, and he split their workers into 2 groups. And the first group was told, just do your task, whatever it is, and you're not going to be interrupted. And the second group was told, do your task, whatever it is, but you've got to answer a heavy load of email and phone calls. So pretty much how we all live now. And then at the end of it, the scientists tested the IQ of both groups. The group that had not been interrupted scored 10 IQ points higher than the group that had. To give you a sense of how big that effect is, if you and me got stoned together now, Candice, if we smoked a fat spliff together, our IQs would go down in the short term by 5 points. So being distracted in the way most of us are is twice as bad for your intelligence as getting stoned. At least in the short term. There's a bigger debate about if you smoke cannabis in the long term, obviously. But in the short term, you'd be better off sitting at your desk, getting stoned and doing one thing at a time than sitting at your desk, not getting stoned and being just distracted and juggling tasks all the time, right? Mm-hmm. Clearly, obviously, you'd be better off neither getting stoned nor being distracted. But and this is a huge effect. A different study by Professor Larry Rosen found that if you receive 8 text messages an hour, which doesn't sound like much to me, it lowers your brain power for the main thing you're trying to focus on by 30%. That's a staggering amount, right? Mm-hmm. So this is why Professor Miller at MIT said to me, we're living in a perfect storm of cognitive degradation as a result of all these interruptions, all this distraction. And so you can see how one of the things that interrupts us and distracts us is this craving for rewards, right? We're trained. Oh, shit, what are people saying about me now on Instagram? How many likes did I get? Someone's tagged me in a picture, right? You can see how that's one of many things that train us to seek out those constant interruptions that are so degrading our ability to focus.